Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast sponsored by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Michael Reuter, who is a customer success advocate and product manager for 360 Sync at Applied Software. He helps ensure clients have a successful implementation with BIM processes and tools, and he brings creativity and strategic thinking to solving problems. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, Todd, how's it going?
Pretty good. So let's start by, what was the evolution of, a graphic designer coming into the construction industry?
Oh, that's a fun question. So, I worked as a graphic designer for 5 years. I met my wife there actually, so I don't really have any complaints. It just wasn't
worked out well.
Yeah. It just wasn't. I just found out it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't like. I love art. If you can see my background, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm an illustrator by trade, but I just didn't like being directed as to what to draw or what to do. So it just wasn't. It wasn't as fun as I thought it would be. So I jumped right into construction instead. I got my master's at Auburn. My wife supported me through that. So it was I just figured it was time for a change, and I wanted to do something completely different. To me, construction was more black and white than graphic design and art. So that's what I went and did.
Interesting. So it was the kind of the black and white starkness that appealed to you?
Either you're right or you're wrong. You build it the right way or the wrong way by the plans or whatever. The creativity, you used your creativity to solve problems, but rather than that was the creativity so subjective. Mm-hmm. There was not as much subjectivity in it. That's what I liked.
Yeah, interesting. So what do you think is kind of one of the biggest misconception people have then with BIM coordination?
I think the biggest misconception, in my opinion, with BIM coordination is that people think, oh, there's thousands I or whatever with this, so I need to address all 1,000 of them. Mm-hmm. To me, the biggest value that I had as a BIM coordinator when I worked at Walsh Construction was it wasn't so much that, okay, here's 1,000 different clashes that I found inside of Navisworks. It was, how can I solve these quickly and easily, so that and then convey the idea of as to what the solution can be to the rest of my team. So it was grouping things together and coming up with a quick and easy solution that'll be productive and cost effective for everybody. So it's not really about the number of clashes, I guess, to sum it up. It's about solving those complex problems.
Interesting. So how do you go about kind of shifting that mentality when you see there's, thousands of clashes? That seems to
so the first time that I ever did it, right, so I was working on this big hospital project. Walsh kind of threw me right into it, sink or swim,
Yeah.
And so I run Clash. I learned how to do that when I went to Auburn. Did Navisworks, set everything up, and I did my first floor of my hospital project, and there was like 15 or 1,600 clashes. And so I think I had a minor heart attack. I was like, oh God, this is going to take me years to do.
Yeah.
But, basically I just kind of learned, I could go through each one and I could do that. And I could, make a point to talk about each one. But what I found out, especially just during the first time that I ever did it, was, I could go through those things, and I actually did. But I found that, a lot of the times it was the same clash, so I was being redundant. I was wasting my own time just by looking at that. So what I started doing was actually grouping things together so that I could see the whole picture of the building. And so when you see the whole picture of the building, then you can make decisions like, okay, it's not just, hey, move this duct here, if it's a whole line that's the problem, then just take one picture of the whole line, and that's probably going to be 50 clashes. So if you're breaking down 1,200 into 50, that's what, I don't know, it's like 20
A
or
lot more
something like that,
manageable.
right? Yeah, it's a whole lot more manageable than 1200. So
Yeah, interesting. What are some of the trends that you're seeing when it comes to construction data?
um a lot of so I've been working with 360 Sync for about 4 years now, and so we've always kind of had this conversation with our customers, like where they want to move files, but every once in a while someone's like, well, I really want to move my RFI data, or I really want to move my submittal data, or fill in the blank, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're wanting to move some kind of data, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's really becoming more and more popular now. Like I'm seeing, like especially the bigger companies, they're looking to migrate their whole systems from one place to another.
Sure.
And so that's kind of what I see the trend is. It's like people are really, especially they're starting to come out more and more. They want to move data from one place to another, so that not only is the file the same, but the information is exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's
That's
take kind of a moment on a bit of a deep dive with integrations, because when you're moving files from platform to platform, it's going to most likely take some sort of custom integration. Why would someone look at developing a custom integration as a solution?
well, maybe they have like a funky thing that maybe they have a specific workflow.
Uh-huh.
Okay, maybe they use a very specific piece of software. Maybe there's just certain things that they want to move from one place to another, or maybe there's just nothing out there that does exactly what they need to do. I would say that those are probably the three biggest reasons
Mm-hmm.
why someone would want to create something custom, and that's typically who we talk to. They're people that are looking for those three things.
Interesting. So, my first kind of honest thought with a custom integration is money. It sounds expensive, therefore, kind of something that only those bigger companies can manage. When does it become cost effective?
So yeah, so I would say that I think that is kind of a misconception. I think that we're pretty competitive with that, but I think that the biggest thing that you really got to think of is especially with us, what we typically do is we're trying to automate a process,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether that's moving data, whether that's moving files, whether that's doing whatever. So what you really need to think about is how much time does it take me to do it now, and how much time is it going to save me if I automate the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what we try to show with 360 Sync is that basically by the end of the first month, you're going to make, the time that you saved is gonna be more than the cost of the product, basically. So, something like that. So you need to kind of look at that and see if you can prove that. The other thing is, maybe it's not an automated thing. Maybe it's money or it's risk that you're trying to get rid of, but really what you're trying to do is find an area where you're terrible, or where you're really weak,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you're trying to improve it. So I always try to tell people, find the easiest thing. What's the biggest way that you can improve? What's the most painfully obvious way that your company can improve?
Mm-hmm.
Think about that, and then if we can improve that baseline, then that's great. Take the
Yeah.
biggest problem that you can find, and then see if you can cut it, improve it by 20% or something like that.
Yeah. So what advice would you give people that are uh, in that process to be able to find those places where they are weak? How do you do that kind of honest self-reflection?
Well, I mean, I just straight up ask them when so what we do, we'll come in and we will, whenever we're looking at doing a custom integration with someone,
Mm-hmm.
part of the process is just figuring out how they do it right now. And so you can see you get on the meeting with them. They're doing the picks and clicks, showing us how they connect to A-Site, or how they connect to New Forma or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you kind of hear the frustration in their voice when they're when they're trying to do one thing, and it's painful, right? And so we document how they do it now, and then we have a discussion about how they want to do it later, or how in the perfect world, I guess, how they would do it. And then our job is to get it from now to optimized, or to the end goal. So we just ask them, if something's annoying them, why does this annoy you? Like, how do you think that this could be done better? What how many people do this? Do you think this is a widespread problem, or is it just you? Stuff like that. So those are the kind of the questions that we ask.
Yeah, interesting. So do you think that when somebody's going through the self-reflective time and finding those weaknesses, is it helpful then to have kind of that, objective third party that doesn't have the emotional tie to it? Because what I think would be a really easy trap would be you're going through it and you're like, yeah, this might be a little annoyance, but we have this solution for it. We've found a workaround for it. It's not that bad. And you can kind of justify.
Yeah, I think so, Todd. I think I always fell into that myself. Like when I was doing something, I didn't even really recognize how much time I was wasting doing something. It was just like, I figured it out. I've gotten better at doing it, even though it still sucks.
Right.
So I kind of fell into that. But I think that basically what you kind of have to do, you just kind of got to get fed up with doing something, so many times. Maybe it's redundancy or something. I don't know. Maybe you're just talking with your buddies and like they're like, God, I hate doing X, Y, or Z. Like I hate moving files from one place to another, or I hate doing RFIs, or I hate doing like change orders and stuff. So you talk about that and you hear it enough, and then you start kind of looking for things.
Yeah, and moving the data around, that you may take a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, a couple minutes here, but so when you're doing it, you're thinking, well, it's not that bad. It's only a couple minutes, but then you start adding those all up throughout the day. And now all of a sudden you're talking about an hour or two that you just spent during the day when it was just a couple minutes here.
Yeah. And it's just because you're doing the same task over and over and over. Like that's what it was for me. Like the story that I always tell with 360 Sync is that, when I was at Walsh, we had to move it to our server, to BIM 360 and to SharePoint. So I was doing the same thing 3 times. So first time it didn't bother me, second time I was like, okay, I'm tired of this. And then the third time I'd get interrupted with a call and I'd forget where I was. Then I'd have to do the whole process over again. So it was like, that was really annoying. Yeah. So, when someone asked me what was, when our owner asked that to us, that's exactly what I thought of. Like, God, I hated that. That was terrible. Maybe we can improve that, So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So where and how do you feel like you really get the value back through integrations?
It's time saved. I think that's typically where you're going to get your value back. I can tell you, for me, what I always really enjoyed doing with, when I worked in BIM as a BIM coordinator or as a project engineer, I really enjoyed solving problems. I really didn't enjoy managing data. I really enjoyed managing the project, right? That's what I thought I was good at. That's what I enjoyed doing. So if I could get more time doing that, then I had more fun at my job, and that was something that I was better at, but then medial tasks like that, I did not like doing.
Sure.
So that's, if you can figure out how to, save time and get rid of doing things that you don't really like doing, or that are time killers, that's where you're going to do it. I mean, you could, yes, there's risk, and then there's also money, but I think time saved, that's going to speed up the process. That's going to help both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that. And then it really helps kind of unleash that. It gives you the space for creative problem solving then, because if you're not just in a time suck of these small remedial tasks that could be automated, you have more bandwidth then to take on other things that most people would probably enjoy more. Yeah,
exactly. You're not staying until 7 o'clock, to move things around or to do this stupid task, you're fresh and ready to solve the problems that you're good at solving.
Yeah.
That's what they pay you for. Really, they don't pay you to mindlessly do things. That they want you to think about stuff. That's what speeds the process along, and that's what speeds the project along.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some potential pitfalls people should be really mindful of if they go down this path?
Okay, so like a lot of times what we get stuck into is like, oh, well, I've got to move this up the food chain.
Mhm.
What people are looking for from their C-level or from their project manager or from the the directors or whatever, what those guys are looking for is just cold hard facts, and they want it clear and concise and small, right? How much time am I spending on this? How much time will this save me? What does that equal in money? Et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes we do that with BIM 360. Sometimes we do that with 360 Sync. I know that when I first started using BIM 360 on my project with Walsh, I was doing it. I was told to try it out for quality control, and so I hated the process that I was doing there. I was like, well, I can't, got nothing to lose, so I might as well try it, right? But definitely the biggest pitfall is getting company buy-in, I think. And so again, typically what they're looking for is like a cost benefit analysis, and it doesn't, when I say that probably is kind of scary to some people, but really all that it is how much time does this take me to do? And then how much time would it save? And then how much does it cost? And then also maybe think about what you're billed at. Like I always use just $100 as an example, because that's just a nice, easy round number. Maybe you're billed at more at that, maybe you're billed at less. I don't know, but basically you do that, and then you're good.
Yeah. Interesting. So that's it's really getting at kind of the encouraging people to convince the decision makers that this is the right strategy. How do you go about pulling in other people that maybe not the top decision maker, but other people that can come along and kind of give extra voice to this?
So like, I guess in this instance, think about like the superintendent that's curmudgeon-y and has been doing things this way for 20 years, or the IT guy who thinks that this is going to be a big time suck for him or whatever. Like those outliers, you've got to sometimes you got to show them that's going to do. Like that's always what I try to do. That's what we always try to do here whenever we're training. It's like, you go after the guy that's got his arms crossed like this in the meeting and like, mean mugging you.
Yeah.
And you try to make that guy an advocate. And if you can turn that guy around, then it's like everybody else is probably going to be turned around too. So, you help, you just try to help them out. You push them in the right direction, I guess. But also you just gotta, you answer their questions. You try to like that like the full company buy-in. Yeah, you've got to answer those questions, the cost benefit analysis, and then just hold their hand with some of them. If they don't see it, you've got to help make them see it. And sometimes that means holding their hand, spending 15 minutes with them, showing this is what it's going to do. This is why this is good. So
have you noticed any patterns of what is kind of blinding some of those people? You said, help make them see it. What are some of those things that is a sticking point for them?
Yeah. So a lot of times, change, like, I'm sure that this is probably a topic that you always have on these, is like change. No one likes it, pretty much.
Yeah, change is hard.
It's scary.
Yeah.
But if, especially with technology, but if you can just get them over the fear of the change, then I think that's going to do you well. You've just got to show them, hey, this is going to work. There's always going to be those guys out there that are, they're always going to shoot holes in everything. But really, I think another thing that you probably want to do is, like, when you're buying something, you want to see the potential in it. So what can it do? Can it do X, Y, and Z? Yes. Can it do A, B, and C as well? Yes, that's great. But when you're starting out on it, you don't want to do you don't want to do the full alphabet of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to do one thing good. Like I was saying at the beginning, find one thing that you are terrible at and figure out how you can improve on it. And if you can do that, then you can start doing 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 things.
Right.
After that, you've got to start somewhere. So what are you bad at, and how can you make that better? And then does this thing, do other things really well? If it does, then great. Then that's that's what you need to look at. But a lot of times I see companies try to bite off more than they can chew. They try to do everything with a new piece of software, and that's just not going to typically work. Sometimes it will, but figure out one solution that you want to solve, or one problem that you want to solve, and fix it with that software, and hopefully it does other things, and then build on top of those things as it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for that snowball effect.
Yeah.
You start picking up momentum, everybody gets excited, you prove that it works, and then you're more likely to have future successes with that.
Yeah.
So the data that projects are generating is precious. The old adage, data's king. Therefore, security of that data should be a pretty big priority and concern for everybody. How do you go about ensuring the security of the data?
Well, for 360 Sync, what's beneficial to us as compared to a lot of our competitors, I guess, is that we're installed on a console. So that means, we're installed on a computer that's behind your firewall, right? And so, you're not putting your password out there past your firewall. Like everything's coming through you and it's going out. So it's not as exposed, right? So that's really kind of helped us as far as security. We've definitely built our stuff so that it was, it reached like as high a security as we needed. We encrypt all of our files and all of our data and stuff. But that's our biggest benefit for 360 Sync, is that it's behind your firewall, so it's kind of already protected.
Yeah, interesting. What do you think some of the biggest challenges firms face with file and data transfers, and then how do they overcome that?
Yeah, so right now everybody is using multiple. They're using multiple things to store their data, and so one place has one thing, another place has other data, and it doesn't have what the first place had, and then the third place, it's so that's a mess. So they're segmented basically. So that's the first thing that I see, both with data and with files. The second thing is that there's no uniformity across any company, basically. And so what I mean by that is, someone may care about, like a specific thing in the submittal, or maybe like when they're doing issues inside of BIM 360, there may be certain they may care about root causes. Other companies may not care at all about root causes. They may just want to know who it was assigned to or whatever. So there's no uniformity for anybody. And so then that makes it hard for someone to find exactly what they're looking for, because there's no across the board thing that does this thing that they're looking to do, right? So the uniformity thing, even if you're like looking at BIM 360, or if you're looking at Procore, or you're looking at some other thing, right? Plan Grid, whatever, all those things, they name attributes differently, right? So there's no uniformity anywhere. So it's right. Kind of confusing. Where do you stick, the bit of data in this one place to this bit of data in BIM 360? So that's been a big problem right there, is that it's not uniform. So it almost kind of forces you to be custom.
Yeah, you have to be an expert on every single platform out there in order to know
at least the ones that you have. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear the story of 360 Sync and how it kind of came about.
Yeah. So this is something that I tell all the time. So, like I said, I've been here for almost I'm going on 6 years, It's 5 years and a half or so. And so before that, I was a BIM coordinator and I was a project engineer with Walsh. And, like I've said a couple of times in this, it was my job to move files from BIM 360 or to BIM 360, our server, and SharePoint whenever they came in.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me at least an hour a day to do. It was something that I hated doing, and it was something that I waited till the end of the day to do because I didn't want to be interrupted and then have to start the whole process over because I forgot where I was in the process or whatever. So, fast forward to when I came here to Applied Software, our owner, Richard Burrows, always asks the question to us, technical types, what's a broken workflow in your industry?
Mm-hmm.
So he asked me that. And so then he partnered me up with our developer, Jason Faulkner, and we built 360 Sync to solve that problem. So basically, we built it to move files from our server to BIM 360. So that was any version of BIM 360. So we did that. So that's kind of exactly how it came about 4 years ago. We just built it just to work with that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So is that kind of the primary use case then for 360 Sync, or are there some other ones?
So people use it to go from to and from BIM 360. They use it to go to and from SharePoint or Procore. There's a whole bunch of different places. We just did Bluebeam a couple of months ago. So we can take files to or from just about anywhere. The second thing that we built it to do this year was we have it so that we can actually publish models from the Revit the Revit cloud models, so that everybody does that. Because I heard millions and millions of times, it seems like whenever we would get on a BIM 360 design call, is that, well, such and such always forgets to publish his model. And so I don't know what the heck he's doing. And so that slows the project up.
Yeah.
And so we made it so that you could publish all of your models automatically.
Nice.
On the project whenever you wanted to. So that's the second thing it does. It does a couple of other things, but that's the main thing that it does right now. Those are the two main things.
Yeah. What's the most creative use case a client has used 360 Sync for?
Ooh, wow, that is a good question. I mean, like I've had customers. I've had customers move their files from one portion of BIM 360 to the same portion in the same project. That kind of blew my mind. We've had customers. Let's see. Man, that you've kind of, that's a really good question. Like we've done. We've had some customers move it to like 4 places, which really blows my mind that they have 4 different places that they have to store documents.
Yeah.
Like there's even been like we've talked with like a law firm one time, and so that one was kind of cool. Like it was completely out of our typical customer thing. So that like they were using it to back up their server and their Dropbox and stuff. So that was kind of cool.
Nice.
So I would say that those are probably those are our most creative ones, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Well, I understand you guys are working on kind of a big overhaul and new features coming into 360 Sync. Anything you can share out to tease those?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So we're doing basically an entire code overhaul. We're going to make it so that it's kind of the user interface is going to be completely redone. So it's going to be there's going to be less clicks. It's going to look more modern, more sleek. It's going to be easier to connect to multiple things. Like one of the things that our customers say a lot is if they're using SharePoint or Glue or something like that, they can only connect to one site. And so we're going to make it so that it's a whole lot easier to connect to multiple things. We're building it so that it'll be able to be, deployed in a number of different ways. And then we're looking to start moving data here too in the future. So those are all the things that we're looking to do. I would say that the user interface and the improvements, those are going to probably, hopefully, by the end of January, we'll have those. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, how do people get a hold of you and find out more about 360 Sync?
Yeah, so you can just email me at mreuter@asti.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just Michael Reuter with Applied Software. That's how you can do that, or you can always just come to our website and just go to asti.com/support/downloads, and that is going to let you download 360 Sync. You'll fill out a little form right there, and then we'll get in touch with you. We'll do a demo. I'll help you set everything up. We'll just have a good conversation about it, and you can go from there.
Awesome. So last question, what does innovation mean to you?
What does innovation mean to me? So innovation means solving a problem that most people didn't know they had. Solving that, and then changing the game for everybody. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. Well, Michael, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on the show.
Thanks, Todd. Have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, you too.